The starter lock phase is the most confusing stage of the lock journey. I don't care how much of a hair guru you are, this stage will test you. What makes this stage so challenging for many people is the fact that all of a sudden you now have so many questions on your mind with no one to ask, or at least no one to give you the right information. How do you know when it's the right time to wash your locks for the first time or get your first retwist? Or maybe certain parts of your locks are starting to feel hard and you're thinking, is this what they call budding? Is this what they call bunching? Is this normal? Should I be worried? Or maybe your locks are unraveling and you're thinking, will my hair ever lock? How do you even know, with all the shrinkage that is going on, how do you even know if your locks are growing? If you're going through all of this right now, I want to tell you that this is completely normal. We have all been there. And the good thing about all of this is you don't have to do this alone, because I am here to help you. Think of me as the lock genie, because I have the answer to all your questions. And in this video, I'll be addressing one of those questions, which is, how do you know when your locks are growing, or if your locks are growing? If this sounds like something that you're interested in, then definitely keep on watching. Before we go into this video, drop in the comment section, when did you start your locks? I want to see if I have any lock twins in the comments. Now let's move on to why we are here. The first sign that can tell you that your locks are growing, even if they're not necessarily getting longer, because with all the shrinkage, your locks will not be getting longer, especially in the starter lock phase. Instead, your locks will most likely be getting shorter. The first sign that will tell you that your locks are getting longer is if your locks start to get bigger, if your hair starts to get bigger. What do I mean by this? If it seems like you now have, instead of having longer hair, you have wider hair, bigger hair, your hair starts to grow out. This is one of the most telling signs that your hair is growing. When I first started my locks, I went ahead to buy so many caps and hats because I was of the opinion that the hats and caps will help me to enjoy my starter lock phase a little more. Boy, was that a bad move, because months into my lock journey, all those things that I bought stopped fitting because my hair had gotten bigger. So if you are thinking about starting locks, if you're watching this video and you've not actually started your locks yet, don't get caps and hats yet. Wait till your locks become mature, so that, or at least get something that is much bigger than your head size right now, so that you will still be able to use those things as your locks get bigger. Another sign that will let you know that your locks are getting longer is when you start to notice a lot of unlocked hair at your roots. Your hair grows out loose and then eventually locks as it matures. So as long as you do not manually go ahead to lock your hair, you will always have a decent length of hair at your roots that is not locked yet. However, I want to add that there are certain things that people do that increases this, or makes the length of hair that is not locked longer. Things like combing your hair when you retwist and raking through your hair, through your roots, and anything that basically detangles your roots will cause your locks to not lock at the roots. And I've said this several times on my channel that you don't want to do that, because when you have a lot of hair that is not locked at your roots, the chances of you removing hair from the lock that it should belong to is higher, which will eventually make your lock start to thin out at the roots. There's a certain length of hair that is expected to be unlocked at your roots. This is completely normal. When you first start out your locks, maybe you install your box braids or your 2-strand twist or your Lilian Okibe locks, or whichever method you use to start your locks. As your locks get more mature, as the weeks go by, as the months go by, you will notice that you're starting to see hair more length at your roots that is not locked yet. This is completely normal, and this is one of the signs that will let you know that your hair is growing, even if shrinkage does not let it look like it is actually longer. Another sign that can tell you that your locks are growing is when your parts start filling out. When you start your locks with whichever method you choose to use, all your parts are going to be crisp and clear. And in many cases, people who had thinning or bald spots, when you go ahead and start your lock journey, especially if you engage in healthy lock practices like I always share on this channel, you will notice that after some weeks or months, all those parts will start to fill out. Those parts that used to be crisp and clear, or that were once crisp and clear when you started your locks, will start to fill out with hair. This is a very good sign that your hair is growing, even if it's not necessarily getting longer. What you want to do at this stage is, if you decide to go ahead to maintain your locks and retwist your locks, you want to make sure that you maintain as many of those new hair that grows along those parts. You want to make sure that you maintain them, or you keep them on remaining on your head for as long as possible. Don't go ahead to roughly comb the hair or uproot the hair strands just to have those crisp parts. You can separate your locks and retwist and all of that, but do not uproot those hair strands that you see that are growing and almost like covering those parts that used to be there. Another sign that can tell you that your hair is growing, and this is one of my favorites to be honest, is when your hair stops hanging flat. When your starter locks stop hanging flat. When you first start your locks, your hair is going to be mostly hanging flat. Now, if you start your locks with Lilian Okibe locks method, it may hang a little bit up. It's not going to be as flat as if you start with something like braids or even two strand twists. However, even with that, your hair is going to be more flat, like more flat. What I mean by that is it's going to hang relatively straight. Now, when your locks stop hanging flat and start to, especially when you wake up, when you've not put any water in your hair and you've not moisturized in any way, when you wake up and you notice that your hair is starting to be poofy and it stops hanging flat, you have, instead of your hair hanging straight like this, it goes out before it falls. When you start to see things like that, this is also very related to what I said earlier about your hair getting bigger. But when your locks if you do not have so many locks, you may not notice the property of your hair getting bigger. But you will definitely see this, that your hair stops hanging flat and it starts standing. When your locks start standing, if your hair is short, then this may show as your locks standing. Instead of falling, your locks start standing. The only time you see your locks fall is when your hair is wet. When you notice this is a very good sign that your hair is growing. The thing is, when you start your locks, you're expected to experience a lot of shrinkage. This is completely normal. Like I always say on my channel, this is completely normal. The length of the hair that you started with keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. However, your roots keep growing. The more your roots grow, the more afro you have. Permit me to use that word. The more afro or unlocked hair you have at your roots. And the more unlocked hair you have at your roots, the bigger your hair will get, the more your hair will stand. You know, everyone knows that afro tends to stand. Afro doesn't fall. Our hair defies gravity. So the more afro you have at your roots, the more your hair will stand. And the shorter your hair, expect to see spiky hair all over. This is completely normal, and this is a very good sign that your hair is growing. If you see this, be happy. I know that it can be frustrating because nobody wants to have spiky hair standing all over the place. Even though for me, I really enjoyed it. I'll put a picture here on my screen to show you what my locks look like at this stage. It was amazing. It was perfect. I loved it. I know that many people do not enjoy this stage, but this is something that you should be happy with because this is a very good sign that your hair is growing. Another sign that can tell you that your hair is growing, this is particularly going to be true for people who start with hair that is not very long. But even if your locks are long, you will still notice this, but it's not going to be as pronounced as someone who started with shorter hair. It's the fact that your hair is going to stop swinging as much as it used to when you first started your locks. When you first start locks, you have your length of locks. Your roots at this point is going to be the smallest. Especially if as your locks get more mature, you engage in those good hair practices that I always tell you on this channel. When you first start your locks, that's the point where the hair at your roots is going to be the smallest. The surface area of the hair at your roots is going to be the smallest. As your hair starts growing and growing and you start to have more and more afro at your roots, this is going to mean that your hair is going to be carried by your afro. So if the length of your hair is not very long, expect that overall the properties of your hair is going to be more or less like an afro. And we all know that, generally speaking, especially if you do not blow out your afro, if you leave your afro shrunken, it is not going to move. No matter how you shake your head, most times afros do not move. The more kinky your hair is, the more pronounced this is going to be. If you have more looser coils, then you may not notice this as much. But if you have very kinky coily hair, expect this to be really pronounced. You may start your locks with a certain length of hair, and at that point your hair is swinging all over the place. But months into your lock journey, you shake your head and it's no longer swinging. That is a good sign that your hair is growing, even though it may not necessarily look longer. Now, as your locks get longer and more mature, it's going to start to swing more. Like for now, my locks swing easily. But at this beginning stage of your lock journey, because you now have a lot of afro at your roots that is carrying all the hair, and especially if the hair that it is carrying is not so long, so the weight is not going to be more than the strength of your afro, expect that your locks are going to stop swinging. It may stop swinging totally, or it may reduce drastically depending on the length of hair that you started with. This is a good sign that your hair is growing. When you see this, rejoice and be glad, because this is a good sign that you're getting closer to your goals.